Hello and welcome to Last Best Hope for Conversation, your podcast all about Babylon 5. We have taken a week off, and I want to thank Lou and Karen for letting me go play in Columbus, Ohio to see Bruce, the last show of the American leg of the tour, though he'll be back in the fall. We are back to talk the face of the enemy. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
Hello, Lou.
Hello, everyone.
So things are starting to heat up. This
Mhm.
originally aired on June 9th, 1997. It is the 17th episode of the fourth season of Babylon 5. And as always, we're going to start with quick thoughts. Lou, thoughts?
I have seen the face of the enemy, and it is me.
Ooh,
Nice.
wow.
Karen?
Yeah, lots of stuff. I mean, I love it when they explain things and also give me questions. And that's essentially what this episode is. And wow, lots of things happening in this, 40 minutes or so? And that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I had thoughts and to jumping ahead, some of the thoughts I had was mentioned by feedback from our wonderful people. So I'm going to try to leave that to them, and we'll.
I'm sure they don't mind if you mention it.
Yeah.
To
So
be
because I
honest,
think they're
that'd be
really,
fine.
really good. Yeah. Yeah, I remember this one. I talk about sometimes where I only have vague remembers of this one. This one I remember pretty solid, and I'm excited we got to talk about it. All right. I guess let's start with, Lyta and Franklin are in Mars, and they're number one's not happy. There's grumpiness. They're bringing the teep sickles, which I did steal from one of our listeners' feedback. And we still don't know what they're going to use that for. And it is, we get more background that, telepaths are not nice people. So, any thoughts on that kind of storyline? And we'll get it out of the way before we get to some of the other meaty stuff. Karen.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd categorize them all as not nice people, but from what we've seen, the majority of them have nefarious intent.
The Psychops, at least.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair, yeah.
Yeah. We've seen two that aren't horrible, right? At least human telepaths.
Right.
And even then, there's some weirdness going on. So I get what you're saying. They're not nice people. Man, we saw it earlier in other episodes this season that, hey, Bester might be softening a little bit. Maybe he's not the big bad. And now we know why he went to Babylon 5. I'm assuming he was shoring up Garibaldi's brainwashing. They said he had to be, topped off or whatever.
Yeah.
So he wasn't there for the purpose he stated. He was there to be terrible.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting revelation in this. I like that we got to see what happened to Garibaldi when he was taken finally. And I still wonder what kind of lasting impact this is going to have on him because, man, he has flushed his life down the toilet, hasn't he? He's been brainwashed. Now he's been told what he's done. And he can't go back to Babylon 5 without a lot of
Extreme.
comeuppance. Yeah. And his employer is dead now. So, he's just, what is he, untethered right now, essentially. So that'll be interesting to see what happens to him, because we know that when his life is bad, he is tempted to uh, kind of give in to his addictions. And we know that drinking is one of them. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with him. I'm just speculating, what
Yeah.
path, what spiral he's going to be on. So yeah, that the telepath was interesting. And I think I'm enjoying Franklin recently. I think the actor has gotten more interesting things to do, and he seems to be like enjoying it more almost.
Hmm.
Um, I saw when he was talking to number one, there were some little moments where he seemed really natural, which I enjoy. And I do like that sandpapery kind of banter, enemies to lovers type thing.
Yeah.
So he and number one kind of bumping up against each other, I find fun. And then hearing about what the Cyclops did to the serial killer is alarming. So many things happened in that little story. I mean, it wasn't even the main storyline, and we got to know a lot of things about what's going on, and we got a lot of questions. So really cool.
Yeah, let's stick with that a little bit. And Lou, I want to hear your thoughts. I mean, first off, did you recognize that it was Harlan Ellison doing the
Oh
cameo?
yes. Oh yes.
Was it?
Okay, yeah,
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. For sure.
I
I,
missed it.
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
He's the technician at the lab where they were reconditioning Garibaldi.
yeah. When he
He
says you
didn't
don't
have.
want to,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
He only had like one line, but yeah, that's
yeah,
Harlan Ellison. Yeah.
yeah,
My overall impression of that whole storyline was it's a good thing Franklin slept with number one, or there's no way she'd be letting them those
yeah,
TSPs
exactly, yeah,
right.
becoming to stay on Mars. Uh, so that was an interesting reveal as to why Garibaldi or Sheridan sent Franklin and Lyta to Mars. I assume that these uh, sleeping, hibernating uh,
Telepath.
ESPers,
yeah,
telepaths are
Yeah.
going to be doing battle with the Psi Corps at some point down the road. And beyond that, yeah, that's just more of a positioning
yeah,
move for the story arc or the season arc, I guess you could say, or the season second half arc after the Shadow Wars was over. But what happens with Garibaldi in the rest of the episode, I think, sets up possibly an interesting team up with Franklin and Lyta and Garibaldi, but we'll see. Have to see if that plays out or not. But yeah,
yeah,
I can see that part of the storyline coming into bigger play later in the rest of the season.
yeah. And Susan being Susan, right? Shoot that SOB on sight, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't really like that, but
Mhm.
we could talk about that.
Yeah. So Um, I'm going to stick with you for a minute, Lou.
Okay.
As our resident Garibaldi fan,
Hmm.
and the frustration of him not getting a lot of love and story, do
Hmm.
you feel a little, do you feel like there's a little bit of a payoff that you go, okay, they had something planned? And
Yep.
were you we had suspected, you guys had speculated that it was the Psi Corps that captured him
Hmm.
and kind of reprogrammed. Did you like the payoff?
I I liked it in terms of what it means to Garibaldi as a person, as Karen mentioned, to be awake that whole time but unable to control yourself, especially for somebody like Garibaldi, it would be extremely frustrating. I just feel that the show kind of squandered building up that tension without giving away the goods. Like they could have,
Yeah.
like I mentioned in previous episodes, like they should have had some interaction with like let's take that Susan line, let's shoot the bastard on sight.
Yeah.
Like if there had been some sort of interplay between the two of them once he went missing and came back, because I don't think they ever had a scene together the rest of the series.
Right.
Like, so for her to have that reaction, it's kind of like it feels more like a plot device that they're okay. We're isolating Garibaldi, so we really want to home the point that we're isolating Garibaldi. Whereas if they had some sort of falling out, that would have made that reaction more plausible. Now it just seems like, oh, she's just saying that because they want to really drive that Garibaldi being a lone story point. And the other thing that I thought that was a missed opportunity was if they could have had some moments where Garibaldi was wrestling with himself, that we could have seen that internal struggle in some way, because for the way it played out in the season, it was just like he's just acting in a certain manner, and but that's just what he's become now. And we always knew or suspected it was because he had been reprogrammed, but we weren't sure how deeply the reprogramming went. I thought it was more of a subtle thing, I guess you could say. I mean, it was done subtly, but how deeply submerged his true personality had become was not known to me until this episode. So if they could have had some more of scenes where he was struggling with his conditioning, trying to find a way out, that would have been really good. But the conversation with Bester, and you really don't like Bester. Like, I was kind of warming up to him, but now
Yeah.
Right.
I've been reset again. It was all, it was done in a tell not show kind of manner, which I'm not really a big fan of. I would have wished there was some way they could have visually demonstrated that whole info dump that Bester had gave us about what had happened to Garibaldi. And
I think they tried by showing clips and scenes. I think
yeah,
they tried, but
yeah.
I think that's fair.
I think that's more. I just think television writing has become more, how do you say, more elegant, more subtle. So that kind of thing would have been carried out differently if it had been written today. But it's still like totally, I'm totally feeling sorry for Garibaldi right now. Like his everything that he's built up is gone, and obviously certain characters are not going to want to have anything to do with him. Like the Babylon 5 won't even take his call.
Yeah.
So my projection is that Garibaldi somehow is going to hook up with Franklin and Lyta and try to effect a rescue operation for Sheridan. So we'll have to see if that's what happens.
Okay.
But and that should be a good scene between Garibaldi and Franklin if they do make contact, because I'm sure Franklin will have found out by then what has happened. So Garibaldi will have to convince Franklin of what happened, and that should be an interesting scene to see as well. So I really like where Garibaldi's gone this season. It's great to strip a person down to his basics and make him have to start all over again. I'm looking forward to see how he handles that. And yeah, it was still pretty powerful to see how much he had been subjugated by the brainwashing. So I enjoyed seeing that. I wish that maybe they would have showed a tear or two rolling down his face as Bester had been describing what had happened to him. I mean, even Picard shed a tear when he was bored, right? So
yeah,
I think that would have been a nice payoff. But overall, I'm happy with it. I just think that it could have been a little bit more, could have been wrung out of it emotionally than what we ended up with.
Yeah. And of course, we're Monday morning quarterbacks, right?
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
But I agree 100%. I think it would have been interesting if we saw like Bester and Garibaldi crossing paths on Babylon 5 and Bester just like putting his hand on him or something really subtle.
Yeah.
Well, even like if Bester, because he severed the conditioning telepathically, even if he had just telepathically joined with Garibaldi, and we could have had like a mind stage showing
Right,
maybe
Yeah.
Garibaldi in a cage or something like that, and then Bester releasing him, right? And then cutting
right.
the connection, like something
Even
like
just a
that
just a
would have been
little
awesome.
thing.
But
Right,
Yeah.
you got a telepath, you've got the tool to make something visually happen, right? But they didn't use it. They
right.
just gave us the info dump, which was, I mean, Walter
And,
Koenig did a great job delivering the
Oh,
lines,
I
but
was
oh
gonna ask.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was gonna
it
ask
was
if
a
you guys
great
enjoyed
scene.
his.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah,
says,
I
I'm
think.
not a capricious man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. No, I'm going to decide.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
so cool seeing him as a villain,
it
Yeah.
is, isn't
and
it?
he's so understated
Yeah.
as a villain in this, especially in this episode where you could tell he doesn't really feel sorry for Garibaldi, even if he says it.
Yeah,
He has no concern for Garibaldi at all. Um, he debates on whether to kill him and put him out of his misery, but really, it's just him torturing Garibaldi a
yeah,
little bit. And I do have to say, you mentioned, you could see them teaming up, which I didn't talk about really, but there is a reason Lyta's there. So I'm thinking Lyta might also have something to do with Garibaldi joining up with them. Like
or
Well,
why?
she can confirm that
right.
maybe
Right.
That,
he's
yeah,
been
like,
tampered
yeah,
with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm assuming that's kind of a uh like the conceit of them being put on Mars
Yep.
together. We have a doctor and a telepath,
Yeah.
both there on Mars, and they're both from Babylon 5. Why were they sent there? Well, of course, it's to help Garibaldi once he explains himself, and now Lyta can confirm it. So um I'm pretty sure that's why they were sent there. And I would also like to know what the teepsicles are doing there, what they're going to be used for. So
Yeah. I got something. It's got
yeah,
something to do with fighting the Cyclops, I think, but for sure.
yeah.
yeah,
So I
And
think it. Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I want to say I agree with you. Walter Cannon is just amazing in this, and I think what a gift they gave this that because of the legacy of Star Trek, often, people from the original cast were struggled to find other roles and to be given such a deep, wonderful role is just wonderful to see. I
yes,
love
sir. To be
watching him.
trusted
Yeah,
with this
Yep.
villain is a
yeah.
testament to not only
Mhm.
the writers and creators of the show, but also to Walter Koenig.
Yeah, and
Um,
how much you guys talked about, right? Like you actually were starting to warm to him, and
yeah,
Yep.
then
Yep.
to have that makes it perfect. I did love the idea that um he did talk a little bit about I didn't think you would resign. We didn't have to totally do a mind wipe because you're already by nature suspicious and
Yep.
so I thought that was it just kind of pushes you a little bit.
Hmm.
Yes, and as we're rewriting, and by the way, this is a great scene I think of when when he's interviewed about going back to the B5 universe, which is not dead, by the way. There are still debates on, where they can shop it and do that. Is he says, I've grown so much as a writer. What could I do in these kind of circumstances now? Right.
Hmm.
right.
Where
So he
and I
acknowledges what we said just
yeah,
now, that
yeah.
things would be different now.
And I do think that would have been an interesting if you had seen Bester in that tube, and then you cut to him in a chair with Garibaldi in a cell,
Hmm.
with and him, you know, screaming,
Rattling the
screaming,
bars
yeah,
and yep.
rattling the cage,
Yep.
while and then like him uh explaining that.
Yep.
Yeah, it just really wonderful. And I love the how Garibaldi,
Mm.
once he's left, he knows he's screwed. He's screaming. And I do think that we're when Jerry Dole goes to Edgar's place and sees everything, I do think he does a great job of portraying his gears are already thinking.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm in this spot. What's my next move?
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, and all right, I know it's probably worthless, but I got to try to call Babylon 5. And then what do I got to do? And
Yeah, I'm
so,
guessing he's trying to make up for the fact that he set up John,
yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely.
But
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is all about him. Um, and I think also it was really interesting that they had the saying, he makes the 30 pieces of silver a comment.
Yeah.
As in, so even though he's been changed, he is aware enough that this is possibly, this is not what he should have been doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that a
A
lot.
bridge too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick with you, Karen. Anything else on Garibaldi and the big reveal with Bester?
yeah, well, I do want to mention that I am a little sad that Edgar's and Wade are gone so quickly.
Yeah.
I think they made things interesting with their plot against the Psi Corps.
Yeah.
And to see them gone, just bloop. And who has the virus and the cure to the virus? I'm assuming
Yeah.
it's the Psi Corps.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a little disappointing, but I get why they have to like get rid of him. He was a plot device essentially.
Yeah.
And I do like Garibaldi's kind of, you can feel his resignation and how he feels when he goes in to see what's happening with Edgar's. He sees that Lise is missing and, he's worried
Yeah.
about her. That scene was Garibaldi at his lowest. And I think he did a good job of that too. So, I mean,
And it's also right seeing her being she tries to talk to him when he's still in the trance and he doesn't, he can't acknowledge. So let's talk about Edgar's plan. We kind of get the full reveal which is very similar to V for Vendetta. Did not know that we would have this synergy. I'd forgotten, but that worked out perfect. For those of you who don't listen to our other episodes, we do a kind of one-offs, and we just recently talked about the movie V for Vendetta. So Edgar's is planning to control the telepaths by creating a virus that will kill them unless they have the antidote.
Which he also controls.
Right. Little side note that the actor who is playing him, Zimbalist Jr., while was not raised Jewish, but he was culturally Jewish, I think is how they said. And so he had a little bit of issue saying the telegraph problem. And so because of his Jewish ancestry, because that was the Jewish problem, was the Nazis.
Right.
So a very clear thought of the obvious parallels to the Holocaust, thought that was really well done. And so let's stick with you, Karen, on this reveal and the ideas that we're going to control. And I wonder, when Michael says, I have no problem with this, is that the real Michael or is that the fake Michael?
Yeah.
And I believe it's the fake Michael.
I believe so too. We know that he had a soft spot for Talia, right?
Yep.
So and he was gonna hire Lyta. I don't think he has a problem with telepaths. So
yeah,
that was not him, I believe.
Right.
And I could see where Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. was uncomfortable, but I do think the point they're making isn't that that's a good thing. I mean, they're making the
Yeah.
point that it's a bad thing. So
Yeah.
I think that might have been what kind of made him feel like it's okay, even
Yeah.
though it was him that did it. Um, and it is like a Holocaust, essentially, to get rid
Yeah.
of a segment of the population that's different from what he is. And I think maybe some of it was jealousy. He didn't like that there were people out there that might be better than him.
Yeah.
And they consider themselves better than the quote unquote mundanes, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, so there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I get why Bester is so upset. I really do
Yeah.
get why he's upset, but I feel like he is definitely, like we call him, the big bad because of the way he's going to go about affecting retaliation for this
Yeah.
move. Uh, and I feel like now it's going to be in his lap to be the Hitler of this situation, to
Yeah.
um, maybe overreact to what
Yeah.
was happening to this. What is he going to do with that virus? That is he going to go after all the rogue telepaths with that?
Right.
Is this going to be another way to control the telepaths that don't want to be in the Psychor?
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing to ponder. What is he going to do with it? If it was him that affected the death and the stealing of the virus and the cure. So
Yeah.
there's just so many things in this episode, and we haven't even gotten to the rest of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, Lou, how about you? Our telepath situation.
Yeah, the German Jew parallel is obviously very strong. It was interesting that Lyta made the very same observation to Franklin that she fears at some point in the future that humans and telepaths are going to, come to heads, and it's not going to be good. So
Yeah.
it is a situation that will. I don't know if the series is really going to cover this in any great length or detail or not going forward, but it is a situation in the Babylon 5 universe that um, really seems to be going on an unwavering path towards some sort of conflict between humans and telepaths. And I don't see any way around it within the context of the Babylon 5 universe. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out, if it does at all. And I think it does help for Garibaldi to make that decision because he I think instinctively knows that and it's one of the reasons why he doesn't that like teletasks beyond the fact that he doesn't like somebody in his head is that I think he instinctively knows that there's going to be a face-off between the two parties at some point down the road as well.
Yeah.
So that whole dynamic is very, very interesting, and obviously he's drawing on real world parallels. I just don't know if the series is geared towards handling that type of conflict or not. I mean, on the one hand, we were expecting the Shadow War thing to last a 5-season arc, but because of, real life
Yeah.
events, they had to accelerate that schedule. So they had to come up with another storyline, and this could very well be the storyline that carries the series to its conclusion. But I'm not sure about that because I'm
So
trying to
I
see
will,
like what are they going to do in the
yeah.
fifth season? Like what's going to
Yeah.
happen then? So let's
So
see.
I will say that the the Shadow War and doing Earth was all considered part of the original timeline. So
Mhm.
he's made it. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting question that we'll discuss as we get into the end of this season and starting next.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
assume that it'll be interconnected at the very
Right.
least.
Yeah.
There's going to be repercussions from whatever happens that continue on because we've seen little things that continue through each arc even
Yeah.
if they're not the main thing, not the Shadow Wars, but we do see, some issues with the Minbari Earth War in there, and
Yeah.
a little piece of it gets carried on to the next arc.
Yeah,
So
I think that the other big question about that as well is that you made that great point, Karen, about um, oh geez, now I've lost it.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. What was it that you said that uh, if it comes back to me, I'll pipe in again. Sorry, I've lost that thought.
Okay.
The,
No,
the
that's
other
okay.
point I wanted to make, Jesse, is that you had remarked earlier about JMS saying that he's if Babylon 5 comes back in some form, that he's grown as a writer. I would like him to also realize that we, as a TV audience, also have grown and become more
Yeah.
sophisticated.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And what you can't go through the same, like
He
one of
knows.
the things that
Stop.
made,
No, it's
Let
yeah,
him
okay.
talk real
Let him
quick.
finish it.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had finished.
No, I had, but I've remembered the other point I will make. But
Oh,
you
please,
you
please
finish
do. No, no.
yours.
Okay. Uh, one of the things that you can't, what made Babylon 5 unique at the time is there were very few serialized shows in that, in the science fiction genre, right? That you had this.
Or any
That
genre.
now, yeah, that
Yeah.
that now is the standard, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Even a procedural has a serialized
An
storyline,
arc.
like
Hmm.
an arc, like the new Tracker, which is the CBS procedural, right? It is a case of the week, but there is an ongoing mystery about his brother and his
Right.
father, right?
Right.
So I think he is smart enough to know not only the audience expectation is higher now. Like it wasn't enough just to go, wow, I can't believe that what happened 2 episodes is showing repercussions in this week. That
Right.
is standard now. So yeah,
Right.
I think I think that is, he knows that in his gut, not only as a storyteller, but he has to up the game more.
Right.
And
Yeah.
what was your thought?
Yeah. And just carrying off yours before I go to mine is that I think the premier show for showing that switch is Fringe, which
Yes.
first
Yep.
season was standalone episodes, and then they finally at the end of the first season decided to start doing serialized, and to me the show became a much better show because of it.
Yep.
But of
Yeah.
course, then you're locked into your audience and you can't tune in at any given week because if you haven't seen the previous episodes, you're going to be lost. But
Yeah.
the other point that Karen raised that think is very, very interesting is what is Bester going to do with the vaccine and the cure? I mean, he's got himself a pretty lethal method of persuasion, to put it
Yep.
mildly. I mean, he could offer he could, use it strictly as a tool, an assassination tool, or a blackmail tool. And what is he going to do with that? Is he going to have I don't know what his place is within the telepath hierarchy, but he's already near the top. Is he going to want to get to the top, become the equivalent of the president of telepaths, I guess you could say, or whatever he wants to call himself? So that'll be interesting to see as well. And I don't know how many more episodes Bester's in, but based on where the storyline is right now, I would expect to see a lot more of him. But I don't think that rings true because I know he's only got a limited number of appearances, but that'll be interesting. But he's kind of likes to play even though he's a telepath, he likes to play in the background, so they could easily, craft a storyline where he just pops up from time to time. But um, of course, would have loved for him to be almost come like a regular, but that I doubt that happens. But that would be cool to see. So yeah, the fact that he's got both the disease and the cure is a very interesting development for the Bester character.
Yep. And I think we can strike out the of the telepath there. What does he want to be president of? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
if he wants the telepaths to take over,
Yeah.
then what power does he want?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting thought as well, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So I will tell you that we have not seen the last of Bester. So we have more goodness to look forward to. All right. One of the things that I we kind of waited till there was a couple of big storylines in this, and so let's get to John. So there's rumors that he's killing off people if they surrender. He addresses that and says, "Nah, man, I wouldn't do that." The Armageddon, no, how do you say this
Armageddon.
ship? Yeah, the
Oh
ship that
no, the
he
Agamemnon.
Agamemnon.
Agamemnon, yeah. They're there, and they're like, "Oh man, even though it's been, 4 years, we're still loving you." And and key members of the crew are there. Um, and so let's just kind of go through all of this where he's set up by Garibaldi. We get the taking him down, and he's captured and being treated wonderfully, and is already starting to feel guilty now that he doesn't have the alien influence. I think, Lou, it's your turn to start.
Yeah, like the whole not surrendering thing was interesting to a certain point, but I mean, once you're into a conflict, people fight, and then they keep fighting, right? So
Right.
that's I didn't take too much from that. The Agamemnon still being that loyal to him, I suppose that's possible. I mean, uh, but 4 years of fake news is, I would have thought would have made a lead at least a bit of a division within the crew, but
Yeah.
I guess we only saw like the command crew, so maybe that's why it seemed to be like all one big happy family kind of reunion thing. So
Yeah.
that's okay. I don't mind that too much. Uh, I guess the thing I struggled with most was with John going off on his own. I just don't think like a leader in the middle of a war is going to scurry off to attend to a personal matter, no matter how vital or uh, tantamount it is that that he does that. At the very least, I would have thought that he would have taken somebody with him. Though I don't think it would have helped much in this case, but because he could only take maybe one or two people with him. But for him to go off on his own in the middle of this conflict, I found that really hard to swallow, even given the stakes with his father. But uh, I guess you could argue that that's um, the strength and the weakness of having a democratic society is that people are free to choose to do what they want to do. Even though it might not be the wisest thing to do at that given moment. So, yeah, don't have too much to say about it. I thought it was all, it was just moving story points along, and I, but it did lead up to that great scene between him and Garibaldi, and uh, I like the way Garibaldi slapped the tranquilizer on the back of his hand. I would have thought it was taking effect quicker than it did.
Yeah.
And at least Garibaldi didn't partake in the beatdown of the captain, so that was good as well. So that was probably the best moment of all those particular beats. Outside of the other storylines that we've discussed, I thought that moment with Garibaldi not taking part of the beatdown was the best part of that stuff.
Hmm.
Maybe the
Karen?
real Garibaldi
Yeah.
showing through a little bit. I do like the line that he says, "You already did." What can I do? You already
Yeah.
did. And he
Yeah.
slaps the thing on his hand. I thought that was a good way to do that. Like Lou, I don't think it was the best writing ever. That little storyline, that little, you know, I assume even if he loves his father, I think he would know that his father wouldn't want him to abandon his post to come and get him. And I think it was out of character a little bit for him to leave
Yeah.
and go all by himself. But I get where they're going with it. So, it's one of those things where you got to go hand wave, and just let it happen the way it happens. I I did like the parts where the captain of the ship that wouldn't surrender, he finally tells him why they won't surrender.
Yeah.
And I think that was an interesting plot point where John finally realizes why they won't,
Yeah.
because they've been fed all this misinformation. And I like that we got to see Mackie, or hear Mackie. And that's the reason that the other
Yeah.
captain gets it. That Mackie, this really well-respected, what is he, a commander or whatever, that he is, throwing in with Sheridan. And I'll mention here that the reason we kind of get that the Agamemnon is still loyal to Sheridan is, I think, due in part to the Next Generation, where we have seen that crew is loyal to their captain even after he's not their captain. We hadn't even gotten Picard yet, but we did get All Good Things before this, right? Star Trek The Next Generation had finished by this time. And so we did see that once Picard had aged and left the Enterprise, they all banded with him when he had this, even if they didn't believe what was happening, that he was bouncing through time, they still were loyal enough to him to give him the benefit of the doubt and try and help him no matter what. So we did have a kind of a baseline for that, hey, if it can happen on this show, then I guess it can happen on this show. And it was less than All Good Things. It was just, the crew was faithful enough to him to join in the fight. We've seen that other crews that weren't really loyal to him were swayed already. So the fact that his old ship, which he had been in wars with, I think that was what kind of solidified their loyalty to him. And yeah, I think that there were probably like peons on the ship that weren't, that had bought into the hype. But the command crew, I think, is the main thing here that kind of, decided to go with Sheridan. And the fact that they showed up just in time to take him to Mars, again, it's a bit of a conceit, but what else were they going to do? They had to, it would have been Mackie's ship, right? If the Agamemnon hadn't shown up. So
one of the things that they did mention is that the current captain mentions they keep having us do illegal, what we perceive as illegal orders. Right? They are seeing the actions of Clark and Clark's people helps them push that, right?
Right. But so are the other ships, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. The ones that were not surrendering also got those same orders. It's just, it depended on what the moral compass was of the captain of the ship. And I think what they're trying to tell us here is that John Sheridan had an effect on those people enough that they understood right from wrong, where other captains maybe are all in on Earth Gov kind of thing.
Maybe a leadership style that wanted a greater service feelings. Yeah. Lou, any thoughts on that?
No, I think Karen's laid that out pretty well. I got nothing more on that.
No rebuttal.
No. No rebuttal.
Did you guys what did you think of, and we'll stay with you, Karen, and then I want to hear from you, Lou. What did you think of the takedown? The scene, it did it go too long? Was it just enough?
What, the beat down of
Yeah,
John?
yeah, where they were attacking him.
I didn't think it was too long. I I wonder if maybe because he was brought back from the dead, he has a bit more resistance to things that would take him down.
Okay.
Like the tranquilizer, like maybe his
Yeah.
body can absorb things like that better. I mean,
Okay.
his life was given to him by that ancient one, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he has a little bit of a better constitution than regular
Okay.
humans. And that's why I thought maybe he could fight off the tranquilizer a little better. But man,
Okay.
he fought back hard, right?
Yeah.
Um, but he was just overwhelmed. There were too many guys, and I thought the scene was blocked very well,
Hmm.
and it was very believable. It made me go, "Oh man, that's gotta hurt.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
gonna leave a mark."
Yeah.
So yeah, it was it was kind of bad. And then, we get the scene later where he's also being tortured. So,
Yeah. Well, there, according to ISN, he's being treated with love and compassion. And
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. She's the happy ISN.
Oh man,
Yeah, I know.
she's a piece of work.
Yeah.
You mean the Fox News host? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
what?
there you go. How about you, Lou? Any thoughts on this takedown?
Yeah, at first I thought it was a too long, but then I thought, but the point of making it long is not for us to see Sheridan suffer, but it's for to see Garibaldi not intervene or take or partake. So when I looked at it from that perspective, then I thought it was okay. So
Hmm.
yeah, I came around to it, but at first I thought, this seems a little
Okay.
over excessive. But then I thought, no, but they're showing this so to show that like what's happening to Garibaldi's, making him drive home the point that he's completed his Judas act.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. And then the only other question, it's not really a storyline, but boy, it takes a long time to come from Mimbar. Right? They
Right?
keep talking about, and I was reminded a little bit of Game of Thrones, where that they would magically be able to travel long distance in episodes or between episodes. On this one, it took her forever. And so I guess in my mind canon, like she couldn't leave yet because they were trying to set up this new Great Council and had other stuff to do,
So it wasn't the
right?
trip that took that long.
Yeah, that's what I
There was still
guess.
lingering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but God, it took like, and Delenn's not here yet. Well, Delenn's not here yet. It seems like we've been hearing that for 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think John's point to Susan is, I can't have someone, a Mimbari, leading the trip to Earth because that's too many other old memories.
Yep.
Was a valid one,
Yeah, but then put her in charge of Babylon 5,
which they kind of did.
right? Which is an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah,
dynamic there. I mean,
yeah,
they do need people to make sure Babylon 5 is still running. They
yeah,
need a command crew. So
yeah,
that's interesting to have kind of Delenn be the overseer there. I'm
yeah,
assuming it's the bridge crew mostly
yeah.
that takes that over. So
Hmm. Yeah.
what's his name? Corwin?
Yeah, exactly.
Even though we don't ever see him anymore, but
Hmm. Yeah. Um, any other thoughts we need to get into? All right.
I hate the newscaster. I hate
Yeah,
her so
yeah.
much.
And I want to congratulate this hero, Michael Garibaldi. Yeah.
Just rubbing salt into the wound. I mean, so terrible. And
Yes.
the thing is, it might not have been as believable back then when it first aired, but now
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe that it would happen. I believe it 100% because it happens now.
Yeah. All right. Let's go rankings. Lou, ratings. What are you thinking?
Ooh, I'm gonna give this 8.5 uh, pieces of silver.
Mm,
Ooh,
there you
nice.
go.
Very
Your
nice.
your Judas is much cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it also 8.5 tranquilizer patches.
Ah,
Mm,
trank patches. Yep.
all right.
Hmm.
I'm gonna give it 9 out of 10 fake molars.
Mm,
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Uh, on Lurker's Guide, it's a 9.26.
okay.
So once again, I think that is Mike Veiger was the director who has done multiple episodes really well done. Yeah, I think this was
Feature.
um yeah, Veiger. We are getting there. I really we've got a few left for this season, and I'm looking forward to making the end going through this. All right, we
Can I
did get
can I
feedback.
add
Yes,
something real quick?
please.
It has nothing to do with the storyline, but I'm continually impressed by their special effects.
Okay.
Space looks like space to me, and there's even parts of the Next Generation that kind of fall short there. And I feel
Yeah.
like John Iacovelli really brought it in these
Yeah.
episodes. So
Yeah.
I just want to mention that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this was a really nice, well done episode. As you said, they had to do a lot of moving the plot along. And I think they did as good as they could do given what they do. And then, as we said, Monday morning quarterbacking, there's things we could figure out and go, but it was good.
Right.
And I did like how, um, Delenn kind of shows that she has a connection to him.
Oh,
Everyone's
yeah.
now worried about John, and we'll see what happens next week.
Yep.
All right, we got feedback. We got not one, but two, but three
We got
emails.
3.
Yes, I just forwarded you a last one.
Okay. Let me open that real
All
quick.
right. So, yeah,
All
we've got
right. Got it.
Texas, David, and Nathan.
Okay. Let's read David's first since I just opened that. Um, Hi, y'all. Hope y'all had a good week. Yeah, I say y'all too, even though I'm from
Yeah.
California. Trying something a bit different instead of rehashing everything. I'm just going to point out some thoughts on the major points. The opening. Question. Garibaldi clearly feels remorse for his betrayal, hence the 30 pieces of silver line. Seemed a bit odd given his views about Sheridan's supposedly messianic tendencies. Will he go down the same path as Judas? Battle, EAS, Agamemnon. Question, seriously, a major warship can just go wherever they want, and no one in the HQ back on Earth has wondered what it's up to? And they later mentioned that the crew voted to join. You trying to tell me that there wasn't at least one night watch plant there acting as a Clark informant? Sheridan says he knows the crew. The thing is that he was in command 3 years ago. Yes, he knows some of them, but normal military operations means you have new people coming and going all the time.
Yep.
Finally, the captain mentioned a crew member recovering from a firefight with raiders. Who are those raiders? Are they another faction attacking Clark? Mars Resistance, Garibaldi's betrayal. Is number one's reaction to Lyta based on the fear of capture or possibly personal betrayal or some of both? Secondly, how did they sneak a tractor trailer load of teepsicles in? Possibly manifested as a load of refrigerators or frozen meat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. As far as Garibaldi's betrayal, how many people told Sheridan it's a bad idea? And I do have one thought. Are there any other Rangers besides Marcus?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, oh, I forgot to mention yay for Marcus being in this episode. Um,
Yes.
Susan.
Finally, yeah. Finally, Sheridan has pulled Susan off B5 to lead the White Stars, but who is actually able to run the station? It's not like they are on duty 24/7. Who runs things when they aren't available? To be honest, Delenn is not the best choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. The capture scene was possibly the hardest one to watch. We see Sheridan try to fight, but no, there's no way he can win. Garibaldi learns the truth.
So I want to pause there, and I'd love y'all's
Sure.
thoughts. As we're retroconning, you could have had two Earth Rangers dressed in civilian clothes,
Sure.
gone in there 30 minutes before, and have been there to kind of watch.
Yeah.
Even though, they say, well, if you don't come alone, that there you could have done that, right?
Yeah, I mean, in all other media, when someone says come along, they try to bring someone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got guys watching from that rooftop, or you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I do like the comment. Are there any Rangers besides Marcus? That is really funny.
Yes, it is.
Garibaldi learns the truth finally. Yes, Edgar's plan was to effectively commit genocide against the telepath. Nice of him to show exactly where everything was stored and how to open the vault. One side note, JMS was notorious for not allowing ad-lib lines. This is one of the rare examples. Ephraim Zimbalist was ethnically Jewish and absolutely couldn't bring himself to say the telepath problem will have a final solution, so he ad-libbed it to what we saw on screen. So 16 episodes or a lifetime ago, the question was asked, whatever happened to Mr. Garibaldi? Well, now we know. Another side note, the Psycor tech talking with Bester was played by Harlan Ellison. Yeah, it went right over my head. I'm sorry. You guys are going to roast me, I'm sure, in the comments, but man, it just went right past me. The old saying, the truth will out, but won't go anywhere, pretty much applies here. Garibaldi has everyone after him. How does he get out? Will he manage to save himself somehow? Join us next week. I'll be up front with y'all. The next episode is one of the most divisive and controversial episodes of the series.
Ooh.
You'll either like it or not. Well, I mean, that's kind of our thing. We
Do you
either
agree,
like
Jesse?
it or not, right?
Yeah, I've tried to. This is one of the things that I waited for them to bring up. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant episode. I'm on that side.
Okay. Now you've planted that. I'm going to have to
Yeah.
watch it today. The next episode is one of the most divisive and controversial episodes of the series. You'll either like it or not. Seems like there's no middle ground. Fans are still arguing over seeded or not, and I personally won't comment on the pumpernickel minority. Seeded or not. So, rye? I'm assuming is what he's saying. Rye
We will have to
bread?
If you continue, that answer may be addressed by another feedback.
Okay. All right. So let's go to Texas next. No, wait. Let's go to Daryl next. How's that? Or Nathan next. That was Daryl. This is Nathan. Hey, guys. Well, it turns out that being one of the quote unquote real rulers of EarthGov doesn't save you from EarthGov. Just like it didn't help Taro Isogi, who wanted to make Mars independent. I really love that Bester has managed triumph to use one of the main characters in the process and get a huge personal win that has nothing to do with Babylon 5 out of it. Because almost all recurring antagonists have repeating comic book villain plot. They come, get defeated, get nothing, and it gets tiring and predictable. The thing that baffles me about this episode is telepaths and the virus. If it affects only telepaths and they have the same gene that activates telepathy, remember Jakar talking about it in The Gathering? Won't the virus have an opportunity to jump to alien telepaths too? Was it any kind of consideration for Edgar's? This is me breaking in. No.
Yeah, I agree too. I don't think Edgar's cares. I think he has that, the human. He's only concerned about humanity. He has that. superiority of like I only care
And
about
the same
humankind.
issue still exists regardless of what
Sure.
race the
Yeah,
telepaths are.
Telepaths are
yeah,
telepaths.
Yeah.
yeah,
Human telepaths in general were always a huge focus in the series, and alien ones were mostly an afterthought. And what lacks for me here is how other species deal with the problem of telepaths. We only know that Minbari made them servicing monks, but surely if there's a problem of controlling or subjugating them or them taking over the government, it should happen for all aliens too. In that regard, Babylon 5 was always lacking, unsatisfying, and falling into the trope of being human centric. With regards, Nathan. Well, I mean, to be fair, we're humans, right?
yeah. I think that's a fair get. And I think that if this was a series focused on Minbari or Centauri, there that may be a storyline. But yeah,
Right.
I think it's valid feedback, Nathan.
Sure,
Really
I do
well done.
too.
Yeah,
I also think that we do get a lot of other cultures, but
yeah,
I do understand what he's saying that the
yeah,
trouble is all in the human hands. So,
yeah.
Lou, you got any?
No, I agree with what he said. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I can't see you guys right now when I'm reading this.
Oh, okay.
Um, so we come to it, the big moment that the season. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Texas's feedback. So we come to it, the big moment that the season has been leading up to. There are a number of flaws with this episode, but by this point, JMS wasn't sure if fifth season would be possible, so he was trying to wrap things up as quickly as possible, and that leaves a few plot holes here and there. I'm sure you've picked those all apart, so I will simply acknowledge they exist and move on. So Garibaldi finally sets up Sheridan, and the scene where it happens is quite a spectacle. Apparently, JMS only had one line. They bring down Sheridan like a pack of wolves taking down a lion, and left the rest to Michael Vihar. Then we get the reveal of Edgar's real plan to subject telepaths, all telepaths, to a virus that will effectively enslave them in perpetuity. He does this because he sees a future where telepaths control everything, creating a society where every facet of life, even your thoughts, can be controlled. Despite the extreme nature of his plan, there is merit to his concerns, as demonstrated by the story Lyta tells about when Psycor takes action against a serial killer targeting telepaths. And his fate is truly chilling. Somewhere on Beta Colony, there is an institution. In one room of that institution, there is a man who spends his days and nights screaming at things only he can see, things we planted in his mind. They have to keep him in a straitjacket 24 hours a day, or he'd claw his own eyes out just to make it stop. But all this comes to a head as we finally find out Bester's plan. I love that he was never after Sheridan in the first place. That's just incidental, a bonus at best. This makes sense as he really doesn't care who's in control of EarthCov, but there's a threat against telepaths and he will take whatever action is required to deal with it. Now, Clark thinks the rebel forces will slow, but he seemingly doesn't count on a determined Ivanova. The person is expendable, the job is not. How will this pan out? We'll see. But for now, consider the inescapable truth of our time. Time. Rye bread. Interesting. I mean, we'll oh, does he mean time? Thyme? I doubt it. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off until Zaveni and Valenstein. Very great feedback this week.
As always, yes. It's anything on the YouTube channel, Lou?
Yes, we had quite a few comments this time. I guess everybody knew we're coming up to some big episodes. So this is from last week, or 2 weeks ago when we did the exercise of vital powers. M. Bennett says, "You aren't the first podcasters to mention Edgar Wetters." And then CPMF 2112 says, "Edgar Winters is even funnier than Zadoom." And then Karen commented that she had to turn her mic off because that was got the giggles from it.
Yeah, I did.
And then Levin Key K4468 says, "Haven't seen Clark. Sheridan and Clark had a one-on-one private video call concerning the disposition of Garibaldi's second in command early in season 2. There was also ISN newscasting coverage, video of Clark being sworn in after the tragic accident, and there are various propaganda posters featuring Clark's face. Oops, Lynn knew this, I see. Personally, I
Well,
think it's,
I think they mean me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's impactful that the enormously powerful tyrant began as an oily, weaselly, insignificant functionary. And your point is well taken, Levin
Mhm.
Key. Okay. And I guess it's just when you're watching a series like this, with so many characters coming in and out, for somebody that's playing such a big part in the story, but um, visually you never really get to see him. These brief appearances that you're mentioning didn't make enough of an impression for me to remember that he had been on. But I do like your point about, the that this tyrant began out uh, as an insignificant functionary. It's uh, it's kind of funny in the real world events that we're finding out that the whole fake elector thing was the idea of somebody insignificant as well. But
Yeah.
that's really jumped up to become the main thrust of that whole thing. So I find that very interesting. Um, and then Texas had a couple of comments, mostly around Garibaldi's attitude towards telepath. He says it makes perfect sense. He's a control freak. He never starts conversations unless he knows where it's going, and a telepath turns that completely on its head. There's no way he trusts him in general. And the ones that we've seen him interact with most, ones he had already established a personal relationship with. He's gotten a measure of their character, so he was willing to trust them as much as he could trust anyone. And then he also points to the moment during his interrogation with the telepath, and I agree with him totally on this. I love how Garibaldi answers the question about whether he's still in love with Lise. He turns to the telepath, looks her dead in the eye, and lies to her face.
Yes.
Yep.
That was a great moment.
It
So
was.
that was great. Thanks for all the comments, folks.
And I want to also mention CPMF 2112. His name is Mark Finney. Is it Mike Finney or Mark Finney? Mike Finney.
Okay.
So I just want to give him credit. His name is Mike Finney. So thanks, Mike, for those comments.
Very nice. So I was, as you were reading, I was trying to see, and I felt like I read an email talking from someone about how there are different meals people sign up for different episodes, but I could not find that in the feedback. But yes, that's why I thought about there is a corned beef on rye um, in the next episode. They discuss that. So
Okay.
that's where that came from.
Oh, you
Yes.
thought it was in one of the emails.
I thought it
Got
was in one of the feedbacks. Yes. So good. All right.
Spoiler.
Yeah, I know. I am not a rye fan, so I do not like
Me
rye bread.
either.
Oh, really?
I'm also
Interesting.
me
Yeah.
either.
I love rye bread.
Yeah.
Mm.
On a side note,
Fisticuffs.
on a side note, that is a good way to describe the difference between wheat whiskey and rye whiskey. Is
Mm.
think of wheat bread or rye bread, and for the different texture, different flavor profiles
Right.
of whiskey. So
The
there.
notes.
Yes,
The different
exactly like. All right, that's it. We are going to get out of here. Hopefully, you guys will check out on this feed shortly. We're going to have a discussion of Stephen King's The Green Mile. We're going to talk about the movie. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to have fun. But in the meantime, if someone wants to reach you, Karen, how can they?
I am at Oliveria on the social medias, and my blog is alliesstuff.com, where the landing page has a bunch of links for you.
All right, Lou.
You can find me on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, where you'll find our Babylon 5 episodes, as well as our JKL Media episodes. And as Jesse mentioned, we're going to be doing The Green Mile today. Last time we did the V for Vendetta, and we've done quite a few one-season TV series, so you should check those out as well. And you can also find my podcast for writer interviews that I do, as well as my Stephen King podcast. And on Twitter, you can find me at Lou W. Sitzma, SYTSMA.
I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. Set Lusting Bruce. I just had a very wonderful interview with Amy I'm trying to think of Amy's last name, who is Amy Linder, who is someone who votes on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And
Oh,
she goes behind the scenes and talks about that process, what she does, who she wishes had been in the Hall of Fame. And she addresses, though not to, I don't know if it will please everyone, feedback about why certain people are getting in the Hall of Fame that other people don't agree with. And she addresses that. And I loved her answer.
Yeah,
So,
the Cyndi Lauper thing too. I mean,
yes, we had
she
Cindy.
deserves
Yes.
to be in there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So very fun. All right. We will be back next week. For now, everyone, be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Yay. All right.
And scene.